This video is sponsored by Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm and now an official partner with the UFC. And just like the athletes fight in the cage, Morgan & Morgan will fight for you if you need them for any kind of personal injury case. But Morgan & Morgan is also giving away 2 tickets to the big Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler fight in Las Vegas on UFC 303 on June 29, a dream for any UFC fan to witness a Conor McGregor fight in person. And all you have to do is click the link in the description below or head to morganufc.com/weasel to enter the contest and to see if you can win. It'd be awesome to see you guys there. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Let's Talk MMA podcast, and I hope you guys are having an amazing one. I'm getting out a bunch of content on my history channel. For those who don't know, I do have a history channel where we talk about some of the most interesting figures in all of history. It's called Trails of Steel. I know a lot of you guys have been asking me for the channel, and I'll leave a link to that below. We talk about like battles and just like the interesting stuff throughout history and skip over all the boring stuff. And I do have some exciting news about future content. I'll leave that at the end of the episode. But let's get into some MMA, man. There's a lot going on, and we have to talk about it first. The whole Conor McGregor situation. The guy went from partying, like doing this whole Ryan Garcia tactic, making people believe that he's not taking the fight seriously, to potentially pulling out of the fight. And I don't know which reason it would be for. Is he injured? Is he trying to get more money? Is it about him canceling all the media obligations? Like, the guy has to fight, man. There's no way he just pulls out like that. Do you mean people probably spent money for this fight? And if Conor pulls out, that would flip so many fans against him. People have already spent so much money on the fight, booked flights, and if Conor pulls out, they have to replace it with something really good. Like, if they can somehow get John Jones in there to fight Stipe, I guess. But there's no way John Jones would take up a short notice fight. I mean, the guy literally pulled out and canceled the entire UFC 151 card because he didn't want to fight Chill's son on short notice. What else could they replace it with, though? Could they put Alex Pereira on there to fight Yuri Prochazka? That would be pretty sick. Both guys have said that they're willing to come back really quick. I mean, Alex Pereira wanted to defend his belt the month after UFC 300. Yuri Prochazka's always down. Now, there is word behind the scenes that Conor is going to stay in the fight, and if he does, I hope they announce it soon. But how crazy would a Max Holloway versus Michael Chandler fight be at 170 pounds? BMF title on the line, Holloway taking over the spot of Conor McGregor. How poetic would that be? And if he were to win, he would become one of the biggest stars in the UFC. Like, that guy at that point would be able to sell his own pay-per-views without anyone else on there. And all of that would carry over to his Ilia Topuria fight. And it just gets built on from there. But it's a risky fight for Holloway. Could he beat Michael Chandler at 170 pounds? I think he could if he survives the first 2 rounds. The pandemonium that is the first round with Michael Chandler would be super dangerous for Max Holloway. But technically speaking, Chandler makes a lot of mistakes in his striking. He makes a lot of mistakes on the ground. And as soon as he starts to slow down, Max Holloway is going to put the hailstorm on him, building the momentum the entire fight until Michael Chandler gets TKO'd. Those are the 2 fights that I can think of replacing Conor McGregor. If they throw in Max Holloway to fight Michael Chandler, or they scrap the whole fight and they have Pereira fight like Yuri Prochazka again or something. But Conor, please stay in the fight. You have to stay in the fight, man. There's no way after all these years of talking about the greatest comeback in combat sports, you pull out. The man that's known to never pull out of fights. The guy who made fun of Jose Aldo for pulling out because of an injury and made fun of RDA for pulling out because of an injury. The man who stepped in with a balloon foot and injured against Mendez. There's no way after all that he pulls out against Michael Chandler in a comeback that we've all been waiting for. The thing that would make sense is if like he broke his shin again or something. That would be understandable, but any other reason? Like, bro, you gotta get through this one comeback. You know, if he gets in there and beats Michael Chandler, which I do think he could, right? If he's mentally focused, he's on point, he has the style to make Michael Chandler look very silly out there because of his sharp counter punches, because of his movement. A great style against right-handed heavy fighters who are shorter than him. And Chandler exposes his chin all the time when he's throwing punches. Perfect for a counter puncher like Conor McGregor, especially a left-handed counterpuncher who has the open angle for the power hand. And man, you gotta feel sorry for Michael Chandler. This guy waited years, did not take up any other fight, banking on Conor McGregor to come back just for him to pull out 3 weeks before. I mean, this guy had all the interviews, you know, he was going all over the place and different sporting events, calling out Conor and writing poems and posting on Twitter and posting on Instagram. This guy was going the full 9 yards on getting this Conor McGregor fight. Oh, Ultimate Fighter, everything. Like, this guy was intact with Conor the whole time. He did everything he could to fight Conor McGregor. And as soon as it looks like it's a reality, Conor ding-dong ditches him. Knocked on the door, made him believe that there was someone there. Chandler opens the door, Conor's gone. And if the fight is not actually happening, Michael Chandler cannot look at Conor. You know, he can't be banking on and holding out for Conor McGregor again. He needs to get another fight. And as for Conor, just retire at that point. If you're not going to come back now, there's no point even thinking about him coming back. We should never believe Conor is going to fight unless he's in the cage and Bruce Buffer is announcing him. But now let's talk about the dogs of the sport. The main event of 302, Islam Makhachev and Dustin. So there is some news post-fight. It turns out Islam did have staff. He confirmed it. And it took some time away from his training camp. Dustin was injured. He said for like a couple weeks he didn't wrestle or grapple at all. And it just goes to show you that fighters are never 100% healthy going into a fight. We have to always assume fighters are injured in some way in their training camp. I did see Eve Edwards talk about how Dustin was injured and he couldn't wrestle and do all this stuff. Well, Islam had staff, that's really bad as well. That zaps your energy. It's hard to go 5 rounds with that. Definitely shower, by the way. There's some guys in training that just never want to take a shower after it. It's so nasty. Wasn't that with like Damian Maia too? There was a time where Damian Maia wasn't showering at all, and this guy would even like sleep in the gi or whatever it was. I don't know if that was just a rumor, like it was a joke that people were saying, but there are definitely people like that. And most of the time it seems like they are the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guys or wrestlers. Of course, it's much easier to get staff from that because you're constantly grabbing a hold of somebody and rolling around with them. But from my experience, most of like the dirtiest people in the gym were the grapplers. They always smelled the worst. So take shower, brother. But man, I'm so proud of Dustin Poirier. He truly gave it his all for his last title fight. Landed some good punches, stopped more takedowns than we expected, reversed Islam with a switch and stood up, which was so insanely impressive. Dustin fought his heart out. And as fans, that's all we can ask for. Fight your best and let the better man win, which both fighters did that. Both fighters gave it their all in that fight. And it was so weird. Did you guys hear what Arman was saying? Arman Tsarukyan? He was saying that Dustin gave up. He said he like quit out there and stuff. That was so dumb to say. Like, it just was dumb and obviously wrong. Dustin got hit with a grappling move that he never would have expected from Islam, and he got submitted for it. That sweep single into the guillotine, flipping into a Darce choke sequence, was on a level that Dustin was just not prepared for. And yeah, technically that wasn't an ankle pick. It was called a sweep single. Just for anybody who's talking to like a real nerd about wrestling, who cares what the term actually is? We know what the move looks like. You just don't see all of that in MMA. You don't see someone chaining together grappling techniques in sequence like that in the 5th round of a dogfight. That entire moment was something that Dustin just did not see coming. There's no way he thought that Islam was going to come out with moves like that in the 5th. And he just got beat by the better guy. He didn't quit. He didn't give up. He just got beat with a more advanced technique that he was used to. And if it wasn't, he would have defended it. And the funny thing is, isn't Arman a training partner of Dustin's too? The guy's next for a title shot, so I don't know why he's trying to talk trash about Dustin Poirier. He's not going to fight Dustin. Bro's a fan repellent whenever he's talking on the mic. It's crazy. He's a very good fighter. He's a really good wrestler. The performances aren't necessarily the most exciting at times, especially with the Charles Oliveira fight, but no one could deny that he's a good fighter, right? He is where he is for a reason. He's one of the top contenders. But there was no reason for him to say that about Dustin because it's clearly wrong and it makes no sense for him to come out of the woodwork like that. Dustin gave it everything he had, every ounce of his being into that fight. And it was not enough. He just lost to the better guy. That's just what it is. Some fighters are better, but Dustin kept climbing up that mountain. He's one of the most perseverant fighters we've ever seen in the sport. That's why it's so off-putting for someone like Arman Tsarukyan to talk down on his heart, of all things. You could talk down about his wrestling. You could talk down about his kicking ability and, whatever it is, like the techniques, you could talk down on that. But to talk down on his heart is wild. Now, on the other side, I don't understand the hate that Islam gets about him being boring. He's the best fighter pound for pound and has been consistently exciting in all of his fights. He had 2 bangers of title fights against Dustin and Volk, finished 3 of his last 4 championship fights. Like, who else is doing that in the UFC right now? Besides, like, Alex Pereira. But I do think this Dustin fight has made a lot more people fans of Makhachev. The crowd started from booing him to cheering him after the fight. He's a great fighter. He's always entertaining, never having boring fights, at least in the last few years. And even outside of the cage, the guy's pretty funny. He makes a lot of lighthearted jokes. He's always, like, joking around, having a good time. He seems like a really good person too. He's like helping the sick. He's visiting disabled people. And maybe some people hate Islam because of the comparisons to Khabib, right? People used to always compare him to Khabib, and that may be the reason why someone would say he's boring and their styles are similar when they're actually not. They don't really fight the same. I've mentioned it on other episodes whenever I get asked this question. Islam and Khabib fight differently. Islam will strike with his opponents more than Khabib will, and he's technical there, throwing clean power punches and kicks to hurt the opponent. He's always looking for a finish. He will purely grapple grapple without ground and pound more than Khabib, which is not my taste as much. You know, I don't find it as exciting as Khabib's ferocious mauling style where he beats your face in with ground and pound. But I overall do enjoy Islam more than I ever enjoyed Khabib fighting. I do think Khabib is a better fighter. Now that's, you know, it's up for debate. It's very close. I understand where people say that Islam is better than Khabib. But even though I think that Khabib is better than Islam, I've never been like a huge fan of Khabib's style. I like when he's ground and pounding, but overall, I like Islam's style way more because he is willing to strike a lot more with clean, good technique and fight the opponent in their strengths, which is so impressive. One of my followers on Twitter summarized it perfectly. Makhachev is a surgeon with a scalpel. Khabib is a butcher with a meat chopper. Both of them are deadly in their own ways. I 100% agree with that. But because of their different styles, they put themselves in danger in different ways. Islam is much more willing to play to the opponent's strengths, similar to like Jon Jones in a way. He will box with Dustin, he'll kickbox with Volk, and he'll grapple with Oliveira. He puts himself in danger by entertaining the opponent's styles. Khabib, though, will usually play his own game and force the opponent to participate. The danger Khabib puts himself in is by trying to force his game on his opponent, like running Gaethje down the whole fight, getting so aggressive he could get hit. Same against Dustin. He gets so aggressive at his opponents that he leaves himself open sometimes in order to put the pressure on them. And that goes into the question about who is better, Khabib or Islam. I think Khabib is a better fighter. Now, it may be an irrelevant topic to even talk about right now because they're so close. It's not obvious, right? I don't think it's too obvious in who is better out of the two. They both do different things, so sometimes it's hard to compare the skill sets of the two fighters. I just think Khabib's style is more effective in getting more dominant wins than Islam. Like for an example, if they fought the same opponents, I think Khabib's wins will look a lot better than Islam's, or at least a lot more dominant than Islam's. I think Islam would have a harder time with the same opponents, but again, a big reason as to why is because he is fighting the opponents in their own game a lot of times, which is truly a very hard thing to do. Like only the absolute best fighters excel at that. And it's only really been like Jon Jones and Islam. Rarely do you see other fighters go the path of the most resistance to beat their opponent. When you look at Georges St. Pierre, he would wrestle you if you have no takedown defense. He would strike with you if you couldn't wrestle. He was known for that. He was so well-rounded and high level at everything. If you didn't have all the boxes checked of your skill set, he would beat you in those areas. Volkanovski is kind of a similar thing, except with Max, the third time specifically. In the second fight, he went to takedowns and went a different route in order to win the last 3 rounds of that fight. But in the third fight, he outboxed Max, right? He outstruck him. So there was an example of that. But then when you look at when he fought Yair Rodriguez, he was very patient. He was looking for takedown opportunities in the first 2 rounds. In the third round, he did catch Yair on the feet and then took him down with a very good sequence of boxing into wrestling. Against Islam, he didn't want to go to the grappling, right? He wanted to strike with Islam. Against Ortega, he didn't want to be on the ground with Ortega unless he had to because he got caught throwing a light kick. He got punched to the ground, got caught in the guillotine triangle after he got out and ground and pounded his way to finish the round. There he had to grapple with Brian Ortega for a bit, but he wanted to strike with him, and that was the majority of the fight. You look at Demetrius Johnson, it was quite similar to Georges St. Pierre. He would beat you in the area that you were more vulnerable in, except the Ray Borg and Wilson Hayes fights. In those 2 fights, he submitted both the grapplers, or the guys that were more known for their grappling skill. Well, actually, thinking back on Demetrius Johnson, he did pretty much everything on every fighter, so like he mixed up the striking and the grappling on everybody he fought. He even shot a couple takedowns on Henry Cejudo in their last fight. Not too many, I think it was only 2 takedowns, but rarely are fighters doing what Jon Jones and Islam are doing, where they'll actually fight their opponents in their style and beat them there too. That is a big reason as to why Islam would probably not beat opponents as dominantly as Khabib would. And it might be a reason as to why people could think that Khabib is better than Islam. Now, there is the argument that Islam's more well-rounded, which he is. He is more well-rounded than Khabib. He strikes better overall. His clinch seems to be better with his tie plum, with his knees and stuff like that. But being well-rounded, this is a very important distinction. Being well-rounded does not mean you're the better fighter. It's who's the most efficient. You don't have to be well-rounded to be the best fighter. Conor McGregor was not as well-rounded as Jose Aldo. Robbie Lawler was not more well-rounded than Rory McDonald or Johnny Hendricks, but he beat both of them. Wonder Boy was not more well-rounded than Jorge Masvidal. You know, there's many more examples as to why just being well-rounded does not automatically mean you're the better fighter. And the same goes between Islam and Khabib. Just because Islam can do more things does not mean that he's more efficient or effective than Khabib. Khabib's wrestling is top tier. There's barely any fighter that's ever walked into that cage that can out-wrestle Khabib. There's no one who's had the ground and pound that Khabib has. There's no one that's fought on the cage, against the cage, as well as Khabib does, and that goes for Islam too. Khabib may be the best pressure fighter in the UFC as well. And because of all of these tools put together, like the pressure, the takedown threat, the iron chin, the surprising power and speed, it makes it so his striking doesn't even have to be that clean. Because those tools by themselves open up the opponent's striking, where it makes it easier for Khabib to punch them in the face, just like he did against Conor McGregor, which was a big example of that. You know, it was something similar back when Kevin Randleman fought Mirko Cro Cop. It was a similar kind of reason. It makes the superior striker of the two seem not as superior in it. If Conor and Khabib had a boxing match, Khabib would get slaughtered by Conor. It wouldn't even be close. Conor would absolutely do his way with Khabib round after round. But in an MMA fight, it all changes because of the wrestling. Now where Conor is still the better boxer of the two, Khabib at least has a chance of landing a big shot on Conor. Where in a pure boxing match, that probably would never happen. And this goes against Islam as well. You know, like Islam doesn't have the pressure. He usually stands back a bit or fights in the center of the cage with you, back and forth in a kickboxing style fight. So the presence of the fence is not as threatening to the opponent. Like as if they're fighting Khabib, because of how much Khabib is pushing you back with his pressure, the fence is always on your mind. I can't have my back on the fence. I'm too close. I'm behind the black lines on the fence. I gotta circle out right away. Now Khabib is cutting me off. Oh no, he's shooting a takedown on me. It's such a chaotic pace. It's hard to get your striking going against him. And another big thing is that chin. Khabib is eating some big punches, and it hasn't really affected him that much. Islam doesn't have as good of a chin as Khabib. You know, you can hit Islam and actually hurt him, the way Volkanovski did, for an example, right? I believe like the first punch Volk hit him with stumbled him back to the fence because of it. The guy got knocked out by Adriano Martins in the past, you know? He got dropped in the 5th round against Volkanovski and got hurt. Whereas with Khabib, the only time we really saw him hurt even a little bit where he had to acknowledge it was when Michael Johnson hit him with the right hook. And that was it. You know, he's walking his way in. He got hit by a very fast right hook. It's the speed of the punch that surprises Khabib there. Not necessarily like there's so much heaviness and weight behind it. It hits him right on the jaw. He backs up because of it. He acknowledged it after the fight. He said it's the first time I ever got hit. But he did also mention that Justin Gaethje's power is pretty extraordinary. The only thing is he never looked hurt at all when he fought Justin Gaethje. There was that one combination where Justin hit him with the, I think it was the uppercut and then the hook, and it backed up Khabib a little bit, but then Khabib came right back at him with the pressure again. Like, that is such a crazy thing. A guy who's walking you down that much, and even when you land punches on him, it just doesn't hurt him the same as when you hit some other fighters. Like when Justin Gaethje hit Edson Barboza, the guy went to sleep. When he punched Tony Ferguson, Tony withstood a lot of the punishment, but at least he was able to punch him off him, right? He'd take the pressure off. With Khabib is like, okay, I punched him, he backed up a bit, but then he's right in my face once again, putting on the pressure. So that's why I do think that Khabib has a more dominant style on being more effective against these other opponents, right? And we saw with Dustin Poirier, they both fought Dustin. Islam had a harder time with Dustin. You know, Khabib submitted him in the 3rd round. Didn't have many problems with him except getting caught once by that shifting punch to the face. And then the guillotine that Dustin Poirier pulled when Khabib shot a takedown on him. Other than those two, he never really had any problems with Dustin at all. And the crazy thing is, Dustin did the same move to both Islam and Khabib. He pulled the switch on both of them, the exact same move against the fence. It worked against Islam. It actually reversed Islam and allowed him to stand up after. He tried it on Khabib and it did not even work. In fact, it got him in an even worse position against Khabib. Now, there are some different factors that we have to remember. Dustin did that move on Islam further into the fight where they were both more tired, they were both sweaty, but against Khabib, it was earlier, so there is a bit of a different factor there. I just don't think that would ever have worked on Khabib, though. I don't think he ever would have pulled that on Khabib. Khabib's positional awareness is just second to none. So it was an interesting debate. I think Khabib is better than Islam as a fighter. I think he's more effective. I think he's more dominant. But it's so close. I can see how people think that Islam is better. Now, there is something I did get incorrect when I talked about Dustin Poirier in that reaction and results video. I thought about it a bit more because I did talk to one of my friends and saw some of the comments as well. And a lot of you guys brought up some good points, you know, about the whole thing about Dustin Poirier being better now or being better when he fought Khabib. When was his prime, in a sense? Okay, so I said that Dustin was just a better fighter back when he fought Khabib. I think he was in his physical prime around the time he fought Khabib. I think his striking was a bit better back then, not by much. He wasn't as sluggish back then. Against Islam Makhachev, he was throwing some sluggish punches, reaching in and lowering his hands constantly. His striking defense was a bit more irresponsible against Islam Makhachev than it was against Khabib. His weight transferring was not as good as it was back then, specifically. This could go to like overextending for punches or not having your legs under you when you're throwing punches and stuff like that. The movement and awareness of where you are in the cage. But because he was fighting Khabib back then, he had to be more cautious about that because of Khabib's pressuring style. Against Islam will allow you to fight him in the center of the the cage, so you don't have to be as worried about being pushed back to the fence and worrying about where you are in the cage and all that sort of stuff. One overextension against Khabib, and you're probably going to get taken to the ground. If you overextend against Islam, you could get taken to the ground, of course, but it's not as prevalent, you know? Like, for an example, Islam was able to slip his head on some of those punches, and he didn't go for the takedown at times. Sometimes he would just counterpunch, specifically with that left hand, and follow up with the right. But this is where I was wrong, and it's clear to me now. Right, it's clear. When I look back at the fight, I watched the fight back with Khabib, it's completely clear. Dustin Poirier's wrestling is better now than it's ever been. This is because he was much better prepared for it this time, you know. After fighting Khabib, training with Gamrot, understanding the changes he has to make when he fights Islam, his wrestling just looked way better. Takedown defense was on point, reversals to get back up, not giving up his back as easily as he did against Khabib. He was a lot better in that area overall, on the ground and on the feet, stopping takedowns. So I was thinking it completely wrong in the sense, like, I was thinking, what if Dustin today, or the Dustin that fought Islam, fought the Dustin that fought Khabib? I think the Dustin that fought Khabib would beat the Dustin today. But that's not the guy he's fighting. He's fighting a wrestler in a sense, or a guy that he has to stop takedowns against, right? Even though his striking was a bit better back then, when he was in his early 30s, the Dustin that fought Islam is a better fighter against that kind of style. And that's the more important thing. I think the Dustin that fought Islam would have had a better time against Khabib than when he fought him back then. But man, I don't want to see Dustin retire. He's still so good, man. He's still one of the best lightweights in the world. And Alexander Volkanovski said that he would like to fight Dustin. He said he would love that fight against Dustin. But maybe fight him at the end of the year or something, or early next year, because Volk's brain needs to heal. I don't think I could take seeing Volk getting slept a third time, even if it's against Dustin. But if he doesn't fight Volk, like, I would like to see him fight Michael Chandler again, Conor McGregor. Well, we don't know if Conor is ever going to fight again. There are some fun matchups with Dustin Poirier. Even a Max Holloway rematch would be so cool. Even though Dustin beat him twice already, a third fight would still be very fun to watch. But in other news, we got some fights coming up. The Cannonier and Nassourdine Imavov fight is this week. That's a great fight. I'm a big fan of Cannonier. I think Imavov is looking better, but I love Cannonier's style, man. I love the way he fights. As long as opponents aren't taking him to the ground, this guy's an absolute monster. But he's like 40 years old. This guy hasn't fought in a while. Imavov is pretty fast. He's pretty tall. When he's on point and he's not just being super shy with throwing punches, he does look like he could be a top contender. But how good Cannonier looked against Vettori, I don't know if Imavov beats him, man. It's a very, very tough fight for him. Cannonier is a tank, one of the biggest power punchers at middleweight, probably the biggest puncher, and he never looked better than he did when he fought Vettori in his last fight, even though he's quite old. The co-main event is Dominic Reyes versus Dustin Jacoby. If Reyes loses this one, I think that's probably it for him in the UFC. And he could lose. Dustin Jacoby's solid enough. He's consistent. He's kind of wandered at the lower end of the top 15 for a bit and has kind of been sitting there for a while. And he's a good striker, man. He's a pretty good kickboxer. So I don't think he has to worry too much about the wrestling from Dominic Reyes. And that could be, sadly, another loss for Reyes, man. I think Dustin Jacoby's probably going to beat him. Reyes' chin is just gone. I don't know what happened to him, man. Reyes went from the guy who arguably beat John Jones and looked really good, too. It wasn't just like lucky performance or something. Reyes looked good the entire fight. Takedown defense, boxing was on point, really good movement. He destroyed an older Chris Weidman. He did beat Volkan Ozdemir. He did beat OSP. He beat Jared Cannonier before that. Cannonier has never been that great until he went to middleweight, and somehow that man carried all of his power down from heavyweight to middleweight. It's insane. But something happened to Dominic Reyes, like confidence or his mental, losing that decision to John Jones. He was never the same afterward. Got knocked out 3 times in a row after. You know, Jan Blachowicz caught him. Jiri Prochazka caught him, and Ryan Spann as well. Like, against Prochazka and Blachowicz, he actually didn't look that bad before he got knocked out. But right now, he's on a 4-fight loss streak. If he loses a 5th one to Dustin Jacoby, they might release him. Julian Marquez versus Zachary Reese is going to be a banger. That's a really good fight. Miguel Baeza versus Punahele Soriano is going to be a good one. That's another banger. Thiago Moises versus Ludwig Klein's on the card. Charles Ratke's on it versus Carlos Prates. Cody Stamann versus Taylor Lapilus. That's a pretty good fight night card, man. Not bad at all. And the other one, we got Alex Perez versus Tatsuro Taira as the main event. I like this. I'm really high on Taira. Alex Perez looked pretty good in his last fight, better than he's ever looked before. The co-main event is Andre Muniz versus Ikram Aliskerov. That's a good fight. Ikram is going to absolutely annihilate Muniz. That's stylistically such a bad fight for Muniz, man. How does he take him to the ground? This is a guy that even Khamzat couldn't take down way back in the day, and you have to think that his takedown defenses have gotten only better since then. Andre Muniz's wrestling is just strong, like he's got a strong double leg. That's really it. His striking is non-existent. That matchup was made for Muniz to lose. That is one of the worst stylistic matchups they could have put him in. Oh, Tagir Ulanbekov is fighting Joshua Van. Yo, that's a great fight, man. I'm very high on Joshua Van. This guy is really good, man. Love his boxing, man. He's gonna be absolutely a top contender one day. Not a bad fight night card. That one's weaker than the Cannonier and Imavov one. But then the next fight night after that is Robert Whittaker versus Khamzat Chimaev. This is better than UFC 301, and it's only a fight night. The co-main event is Sergey Pavlovich versus Alexander Romanov. Then you have Kelvin Gastelum versus Daniel Rodriguez. That's a good fight. Muhammad Naimov versus Melsik Baghdasaryan. That's a great fight as well. Johnny Walker versus Volkan Oezdemir. Someone's getting knocked out. Even though Volkan's power seemed to have went away somehow, Johnny Walker's chin brings that power back up again. Nasrat Haqparast versus Jared Gordon. That's a decent fight. It's not bad. Renat versus Nicholas Dalby. That's a fine fight. Not too bad. Fareed Bashar versus Montel Jackson. That's a great fight. Long Shao versus Lee Chung-ho. That's a pretty decent fight too, man. That's the first on the entire card. What an insane fight night card, man. Whittaker and Khamzat is such a good fight. I can't wait for that. And the co-main event. Whittaker has the style on paper. As Anthony Smith would say, he has a style on paper to beat Khamzat, but I don't know if he gets past those first 2 rounds. I was going to say, we never seen Whittaker get bulldozed in the grappling in the first round, but Dricus kind of did that. So he tripped him and just landed a lot of ground and pound shots. Khamzat could do something quite similar. But if the fight goes into the 4th and 5th, I have to favor Whittaker to win that fight. Khamzat's cardio is just not that good. But Whittaker cannot underestimate the power in Chimaev's hands. Chimaev's got some pretty good power, man. He's pretty fast with the jab. I don't know who's going to win that fight. I think if it's a prime Robert Whittaker, he should beat Khamzat. But it depends how much better Khamzat has gotten, especially from that Kamaru Usman fight. Volkov is probably getting knocked out. This guy was saying like he was in complete fear of sparring with Pavlovich. Understandably so. Pavlovich's power is just outrageous, and his boxing technique is nothing to scoff at. Volkov is a bit of a plotter. He'll be right in front of Pavlovich's punches, which is such a crazy thing. Volkov has got to get away from Pavlovich as much as he can, but Pavlovich has a reach advantage, at least with his arms, because when we're talking about the legs, literally like over half of Volkov's body is his legs. So get the teeping, get the front kicks, keep Pavlovich away, and just kick at him. And then after that is UFC 303. But let's go to the questions, and we're going to start with Mike Griffith. If you were Conor McGregor's coach, what's the one thing you would change in his fighting style? What's the one move that always gets him into trouble? And what's the one thing you like the most about his style? I would focus on the boxing more than he is. Karate style or boxing style that you saw from the 2nd Dustin fight to the 3rd Dustin fight, he's still going to be vulnerable to the leg kicks regardless. And I like the way his hands looked better in the 2nd Dustin fight, which I arguably say was the best form of Conor McGregor. It was quite different, and we talk a lot about the karate stance stuff, but I thought the boxing style was the best his hands ever looked. He had good footwork. His lower stature could defend takedowns better. And if you remember from I think it was the first leg kick from Dustin Poirier, he backed away from it, right? He was able to step back and cause it to overextend, missing the target, and he can capitalize or counter right off of that with his hands, you know? So I would say that style of Conor I would like a lot more. What's the one move that gets him into trouble is overextending with the left without setting it up first, whether that be off of the lead hand feints and probing it out there, or behind some kind of footwork, right? Sometimes he'll just throw his left hand out there. He did it against Dustin in the 3rd fight. He also did it against Eddie Alvarez, but for a different reason. There was one sequence where Eddie's back was close to the fence. Conor was cutting him off pretty well, and he would paw out with his left hand. But he didn't throw it with a lot of power. He was throwing it out there to measure the reach and also get Eddie's attention on it before he comes in with the right hand. So he was masking in his steps, which was the most important thing with every hand he threw forward. So first he pawed out with the left, stepped behind it with the right, and got Eddie to move his head in the exact positions that he wanted him to, and then fire off the left hand, dropping him. So if he's not setting up his left hand and he's just throwing it out there, he could get caught and knocked out by Michael Chandler for that. And the one thing I like the most about his style, his counter punches. Like his counter left hand is the best. I've never seen a better left hand counter in MMA ever. His ability to slip punches in his prime and then return with the left hand is just as advanced as you can get. Like, you don't see that a lot of times in MMA, and he was doing it consistently. That's why we want to see Conor in there with Chandler, man. We want to see him fight. And then next question by Richard Connolly. Hey Weasel man, which of these two moments would become more legendary than the other if they happen in the future? Number 1, knocking out Jones like he did to DC the second time and finishing him in a very similar fashion against the cage. Number 2, Lifting Islam across the octagon like a baby in the 5th round like Merab did to Cejudo, and you win afterwards by a decision, I would say knocking out Jones. The way that he knocked out DC would be kind of crazy. Because he is so tall, getting a knockout like that is pretty wild, and Jones is known for a really good chin too, so if you knocked him out, that in itself is crazy. Lifting Islam across the cage like that would be a pretty insane moment. But we have seen Islam getting taken down before, right? I think Thiago Moises took him down by actually picking him up and putting him to the ground. So he didn't carry him across the octagon in the 5th round like that, and he didn't win by decision, but at least we did see someone pick Islam up and put him to the ground after. So we've kind of seen something similar, right? Look with Abwan Nash. Hey Weasel, I think you should score low, medium, and high for grappling sequences during your breakdowns. I think slams and close submission attempts should be scored as high, taking someone's back and mounting someone would be scored as a medium, and controlling someone on the ground, reversals and submission attempts where the opponents would be able to escape without much difficulty should be scored as low. What are your thoughts on it? Sure, I could do that as well, and I think those are good descriptions of what a high, medium, and low would look like, because big slams and close submission attempts are big when it comes to scoring a fight, but the slams would have to weigh in different kind of impact, right? If it's just like I picked you up and slammed you and nothing really happened, the slam itself should not be scored as highly, right? Now, if it's a Kevin Randleman and Fedor Emelianenko slam, that would score as a high, or a heavy, should I say. Then with the Nano Peach, what's next for all the winners and losers of UFC 302? Islam versus Arman, Dustin versus, I'd like to say Conor if he fights and beats Michael Chandler, or you could do Dustin versus Colby. A rematch with Oliveira wouldn't be bad. There's some good fights you can have with Dustin Poirier. For Sean Strickland, he gets a title shot. For Paulo Costa, he's ranked number 8. Maybe he could fight Roman Dolidze or Barallo. For Kevin Holland, maybe the winner of Luque and Nick Diaz. For Mikhail Alexiachuk, he could fight Cesar Almeida. That would be a fun fight. Nico Price versus Brian Battle. And if Battle beats Price, he should be in the top 15. Maybe. It depends what happens with the Nick Diaz of Vicente Luque fight. For Alex Morono, you can give him Basil Hafiz. Randy Brown, maybe you could do the rematch with Nico Price. If not, the winner of Renat and Nicholas Dalby. And then for Eligio Zaleski dos Santos, you could do him and Jake Matthews. Then we go to S. Dotwal. Build the worst UFC main card possible. Only stipulation is you can use 2 rematches max, such as Izzy versus Romero, the Black Beast versus Francis Ngannou, etc. Your number 1 fan from San Francisco. Thanks, man. I would say shouting out San Francisco these days is a good thing. Not to say anything bad about the city. I don't know. I only hear crazy stuff out of that place. So the worst main card possible. Israel Adesanya versus Leon Edwards. That would be a sleeper of a main event. Bilal Muhammad versus Caio Borralho. That's a kind of co-main event to tuck you in at night. Mohamed Mokaev versus Amir Al-Abazi. Rose Namajunas versus Carla Esparza 3. And let's bring him back. Mr. NyQuil himself, John Fitch. Have John Fitch lay on top of Neil Magny. That's a pretty solid main card, huh? Or you could just stack it with female bantamweights. Then we go to Yoel Castro. Who is the worst judge currently judging right now? Torelli. I don't know if you can outdo that scorecard he gave to Costa. I don't think you can have a worse scorecard. I mean, maybe it's recency bias, but is he Costa's cousin? Is he his friend or something? What was that scorecard? How'd you give him 4 rounds? Then again, we do remember when Cecil Peoples scored the Shogun and Lyoto fight for Lyoto. And his reasoning, he actually gave a reason as to why he scored it for Lyoto Machida. He said leg kicks don't win fights, or something like that. He said leg kicks don't cause damage, or leg kicks don't win fights. So Cecil Peoples is not only one of the worst judges of all time, he's one of the worst refs of all time as well, if you ever seen that. A double whammy. And then Shogun went into the rematch and said, yo, this ain't going to the scorecards anymore. I'm knocking this guy out first round. That was such a banger era for the light heavyweight division. Shogun, Rashad, Lyoto, Rampage, Forrest Griffin for a little bit. Then John Jones came in and just swept the field. But in boxing, is Adelaide Byrd still regarded as the worst boxing judge in history? Then we go to Left Lane MMA. Top 5 most casual statements someone can make. These UFC fighters can't beat me in a fight because I'll just see red and bodies will start dropping. MMA fighters are not real fighters because they have rules. Wrestling is boring. Not just lay and pray. All of wrestling is boring. The greatest fighters of all time are Ronda Rousey and Conor McGregor. I don't watch bantamweight and flyweight because they're little people, and little people couldn't beat me in a fight. If someone had me in a rear naked choke, I would just poke their eyes. Who'd win in a fight? Conor McGregor or John Jones? Well, that's more of a question than a statement. But yeah, there's so many. What are the comments say here, or the replies? This is from Omari Kisi. In no particular order, number 1, Aldo can't be the GOAT of featherweight because McGregor beat him in 13 seconds. Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah, that's actually a very common one you see. Number 2, wrestling is always boring. Yep, I agree with that. Number 3, I'd rather see the champion fight, insert popular fighter, over insert actual contender who deserves title shot. Yeah, that happens a lot. Number 4, of course I don't like flyweight. Who wants to watch little people fight? They should cut the division. I agree with that. That's one of the most common ones. In fact, some of my friends say this. So that's why, actually, a lot of the stuff I said, I've heard my friends say while we're watching fights. I have a friend that didn't just say flyweight. He said anyone from lightweight and down. He doesn't care to watch because they couldn't beat the light heavyweights or the heavyweights. I mean, fair enough. You watch whatever fights you want to watch, but that's wild because the best fighters in the UFC are usually from lightweight to bantamweight, and they're missing all of those fights, which is crazy. Imagine watching MMA and only watching light heavyweights and heavyweights. Imagine that. Like, you don't even know most of the lighter guys, but you know all the heavier guys. You're like watching a different sport from the rest of the world at that point. And then your 5th one sees Instagram posts about top 10 fighter. Who is this guy? Yeah, this kind of goes in line with some of the other ones here. Run Diggity says number 1 is Khabib is the GOAT. Yeah, I do see some people say that as well. This other person says Volk is the featherweight GOAT. To be fair, I don't think it's a casual take because at least they're close, right? At least they're at number 2. And another person says Conor is the featherweight GOAT. Yeah, that would be another one. Mainly because Conor's the most popular fighter, so all the casual fans know who he is. They're with a mark. Do you think Charles is too comfortable on his back? He accepts bottom position in his fights, barely gets hit clean, and could submit anyone, but in the judge's eyes, it's not a good look, even if he does more damage from the bottom. In some fights, it depends who he's going up against. Like, if he's fighting Islam Makhachev or anybody with a heavy wrestling style like Arman Tsarukyan, yeah, accepting the bottom position is probably not a good idea, considering that they're just going to defend everything you do while they're on top, or at least that's their focus for most of it. It's very hard to submit a good wrestler who has jiu-jitsu training or some other form of grappling training where they can just defend submissions, right? If they're just being defensive while on top, it's very hard to submit anybody at this level of the game. So against those kind of fighters, Charles should not be sitting on his back the whole fight, If he's fighting someone like Dustin Poirier or Justin Gaethje or strikers who are either not good on the ground or okay on the ground, then his guard game would be a lot more efficient. Look at the SJD. If my homie is gay, does that make me gay by association? If you're both wearing socks at the same time in the same room, yes. Look at the Ilias. I am not in danger, Skylar. I am the danger. I am the one who knocks. Breaking Bad. I haven't finished Breaking Bad, but a lot of people say it's the best show out there. I know there's a lot of Walter fans, but I like Jesse. I don't know why I like Jesse. Then we're going to Simply Pump. Hey, Weasel, longtime fan. I got a question for you. What is one big weakness that a fighter has in each division that if they were to fix, they could become champion, or they would become champion? And can you just pick a fighter that would benefit the most from this? For the heavyweight division, I can say Tom Aspinall keeping his chin down and being more defensively responsible, or you could say Ciryl Gane developing insane takedown defense. At light heavyweight, if Alex Pereira developed a really good takedown defense, he would be unstoppable. For the middleweight division, maybe Sean Strickland having more punching power. For the welterweight division, if Leon was more aggressive with his striking. For the lightweight division, Justin Gaethje's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is probably the biggest hole in the entire top 15, so he would benefit the most with a fix like that. But Michael Chandler fighting a lot smarter, so it would have to be some of a fight IQ adjustment, and he could have been champion by now if he didn't just swing for the fences every time he was fighting someone. For the featherweight division, if Brian Ortega got way better at wrestling, can you imagine if this guy could take down anybody in this weight class? Who would beat this guy? Like Topuria and maybe Volkanovski could get back up, right? Defend the submissions and get back up. But man, Brian Ortega with really good wrestling would be such a hard fighter to beat. For the bantamweight division, if Peter Yan and Chito were more aggressive with their striking, especially in the first round. And for the flyweight division, if Pantoja got a lot better with his boxing. Then we go to Yoel Castro. Would you rather go into a fight with Steve Mazzagatti as the ref, or have the 3 judges at the ringside be Doug Crosby, Dave Torelli, and Adelaide Bird? Probably go with the 3 blind mice, because if Steve Mazzagatti's reffing, and let's say you're fighting and you get dropped, right? Whatever. If they're ground and pounding you and you're unconscious, Steve Mazzagatti might be spaced out and he's just thinking about grocery shopping. He's thinking about going for a walk, the Super Bowl, the next fight, all while your head is getting bounced off the canvas with every punch. Or if they put you in a rear naked choke, he's just watching you and you've been tapping for like 20 seconds straight. That'd probably be way worse than if those 3 judges just score the fight for the other fighter, even though you should have won. I don't know, that's tough. Can you imagine the scorecards? Like, let's say you dominated this guy, right? You beat him every single round, easily. Clear win for you, 50-45. And then Bruce Buffer is announcing the scorecards. Doug Crosby scores the fight 49-46 for the opponent. Dave Torelli scores the fight 47-47. And Adelaide Bird scores the fight 50-45 for Canelo Alvarez. Canelo wasn't even fighting you. It was just some other guy. But Adelaide Bird had a scorecard in her pocket she accidentally gave boost buffer. Then we go to boredoms. How do you see Usman Nurmagomedov versus Arman Tsarukyan playing out? I could see the wrestling canceling out, or it could be somewhat similar to how Islam fought Tsarukyan, with just like crazy scrambles and reversals. It's hard to say. Maybe Arman would beat him because he does have the experience of fighting Islam Makhachev. He is short. He does throw wild punches out there. He will press you back in the striking, but it's not crazy like something Usman couldn't really handle. I think his kicking technique and just long range attacks with the jabs and stuff like that might push Arman back a bit. But yeah, very tough fight to call, I think. I might go with Arman, but I could see Usman winning as well. Then we go to Grant Styles. Rapid fire, who wins these matchups? Cyril Gane versus Sergey Pavlovich. I'm gonna go with Cyril Gane. John Jones versus Curtis Blades. I'd go with Jones, but very close fight. Leon Edwards versus Jack Della Maddalena. I'll go with Leon. Alexander Pantoja versus Mohamed Mokaev. Gotta go with Pantoja. Dricus Duplessis versus Jared Cannonier. I'll go with Dricus. Alexander Volkanovski versus Dustin Poirier. Gotta go with Dustin. Davison Figueiredo versus Jose Aldo. I'll go with Jose Aldo. German Klar. If current Islam Makhachev in his prime were to fight these past fighters at 155 in their primes, break down how you think these fights would go. Conor McGregor, the UFC 205 version. I think Makhachev plays at a distance a bit with Conor, doesn't rush in too much to get countered by anything crazy. It's southpaw versus southpaw. Makhachev will throw out a lot of jabs, look for Conor to get aggressive before he shoots for takedowns. And if Conor doesn't get aggressive, then Islam will probably just start shooting eventually in the fight, and I think he would get Conor to the ground. But I could see that fight actually going to a decision. I think that version of Conor would focus on the takedown defense more than anything else. I think his wrestling would get good enough to stuff some of the takedowns, land some good shots on the feet. Islam doesn't have the best chin, so Conor could potentially catch him in some moments of that fight. So I do think Islam would win the fight, but Conor would be a live underdog. He could catch him with the left hand better than anybody else. Tony Ferguson from UFC 216 or UFC 229. I gotta go with Islam. I think he takes him down, lands some ground and pound shots. He'd be way too patient for Tony to catch him in some chaotic scramble. I think Tony had a better chance of beating Khabib than beating Makhachev. RDA from UFC 185 when he fought Anthony Pettis. That would be an interesting fight. A very well-rounded RDA who had great pressure, good jabs, a patient and accurate left hand. I just don't know if he can stop the takedowns. He won't get submitted. I don't think Islam would submit RDA, but Islam will probably win by a decision. Throwing out kicks from range, making RDA pick up his hands a lot, guarding from the kicks, and then the takedowns come afterward, and I think Makhachev will win by a decision. And then you say, personally, I believe Makhachev has the well-rounded skill set to defeat all three. Love the videos, bro. Keep up the great work, as always. Thank you so much, man, and thank you for the question. Then go to Sleepy Squirtle. Imagine you have Francis Ngannou standing over you, about to unload hammer fists. Who would you rather have as the ref to save you? Steve Mazzagatti, Mario Yamasaki, or Arizona Mazzagatti El Ghani, aka the dude who saw Jamal Hill get his arm broken and didn't stop the fight? You know how crazy that is? As much as we know about Steve Mazzagatti and Mario Yamasaki having a bad rap, we rarely ever talk about Arizona Mazzagatti, who was watching Jamal Hill get maimed out there. I mean, the Kevin Holland and Mikhail Alexiachuk fight got stopped because the ref thought that Mikhail's arm broke, and I believe it didn't, right? Or was there some like torn ligaments? I'm hearing that his arm actually wasn't broken. Jamal Hill's arm bent backwards, dangling in that triangle choke, and Arizona Mazzagatti's like, nah, you're good. Fight it off. Isn't it crazy how different results of a fight could be just because of who's reffing the fight? If Arizona Mazzagatti was reffing the Kevin Holland and Mikhail fight, he wouldn't have stopped it. Now, I don't think Mikhail would have gotten out of that armbar, but that's kind of insane. Free Steve and Mario, man. Arizona Mazzagatti is the real worst ref in the sport. No, I'm joking, but if I were to pick a referee, if Francis Ngannou is finishing with ground and pound, I would get Steve Mazzagatti in there, honestly, because Mario Yamasaki is less athletic. He's less coordinated. Like, look at the way he walks into stopping fights sometimes. He's like waddling in there like a penguin. He bends over to grab them off, and he could barely even do that. He just hopes that they get off their opponent. Steve Mazzagatti was kind of agile, so he'd probably get in there quicker than Mario Yamasaki if he wanted to stop the fight. Then we go to Dev. Best advice for someone starting combat sports in their 20s. And how does a fighter know when they're in their prime? For instance, some hit their primes early, whereas Cannonier is 41 and seems to be entering his prime. Those are some good questions, man. Best piece of advice for someone who's starting combat sports? Well, the first question is why you're going into combat sports. Are you actually looking to compete or just to train for yourself? If you're looking to compete, finding the right gym is very, very important in the beginning. Find a gym and coaches that mesh well with you. You know, the community is very important. If everybody's there ready to learn and they're dedicating their time in order to hone their skills and better everybody, not just themselves, it will help you tremendously. But these days, man, you got to be kind of lucky to find a gym like that. You know, there's so many more gyms where the people training have such an ego where they would fight you instead of spar with you. Teammates don't help, you know, they're very selfish with just focusing on what they got to do to excel their careers. And there is a saying that MMA is a selfish sport. It is a selfish sport when you're in training camp. and when you're in the fight. When you're just training, you cannot be selfish. Well, you can be, but you'll be held back from the rest of the fighters around the country. The saying of iron sharpens iron is a very true statement for pretty much anything. So I cannot emphasize it enough. Finding the right gym in the beginning, finding good coaches that mesh well with you is one of the most important things you could start out doing. This means you might have to gym hop sometimes, and there's nothing wrong with that. And these days, gyms are so expensive, especially when you want to learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai and boxing and wrestling all together. The more disciplines you want to learn, the more expensive it's probably going to be. So that's another part of it that you have to take into consideration is how much are you willing to spend every month before you get into your career and you start getting money from fighting and you can spend more money for more disciplines to learn, And if you're in America, you're most likely learn some kind of wrestling in high school, right? Or in college. So in that way, you could probably just spend money in the beginning to learn striking, so boxing or Muay Thai, and also maybe Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu if you need it. And then the further you go into your career, the more disciplines you're going to be able to learn. You become a regular at the gym and the coaches are going to be you're also your managers in the beginning, and they'll help you out a lot from there. So it's very important to find the right coach and stay dedicated to training, stay dedicated to your goals. What is it that you want to be? You want to become a UFC champion? You want to just become the best fighter you can be? There's going to be times where you don't feel like going to training. There's going to be times you get injured. There's going to be times you might get knocked out in sparring or rocked. But every fighter gets injured. Every fighter gets hurt in sparring. Every fighter has felt like they did not want to go to training that day because once you get going in your combat sports career, it gets tougher. You got to stay way more consistent with being in the gym, but never lose sight of becoming the best. If you don't take days off and you stay in the gym, you'll be ahead of so many people. And the other thing is, in your early 20s, it's not too late. You have examples you could look up to, like Alexander Volkanovski is a big one, right? He started in his early 20s. And he became one of the best fighters we've ever seen in MMA. How crazy is that? You can even look at Ellen Joban or Jimmy Manuwa. They started very late as well. I think Jimmy Manuwa started at like 27 years old, and he was ranked top 3 at one point in the light heavyweight division. I believe when he fought Volkan Oezdemir, he was number 3. So I believe in you, man. You can absolutely do it. And when you do, make sure to leave a comment about it. And maybe one day we get to see you in the UFC or something, and I can make a breakdown on one of your fights. So I believe in you, man. Stay dedicated to training and have a good time with it as well. Enjoy learning new techniques. Enjoy the camaraderie in the gym. And then last question, we go to Bullen Non-Cavier. What kind of music do you listen to, Weasel? Huge fan. Yes, I wanted to talk about this. So I'm back into rap. I got off of listening to it for a while. But Slim Shady being back, I'm not gonna lie, got me right back into listening to some old school rap. I don't like most of the new stuff. Drill is pretty cool with Pop Smoke. Some European rap is pretty cool too. But yeah, that's mostly what I'm listening to these days. Some of my favorite artists of all time are Big Pun. I think Big Pun's one of the best rappers ever. Big L as well. Eminem. I think Eminem's the greatest rapper ever, especially in his prime in like the late 90s, early 2000s. DMX. DMX hits like no other, man. I like him better than Tupac. Some people will compare DMX to Tupac, but even though I think Tupac is the better rapper, if you're looking for like maybe better lyrics, a better message, but DMX was way more hype, man. There's no better gym music for me than DMX. When you listen to Intro, Party Up, X Gonna Give It To You, Where the Hood At, DMX is actually the first musical artist out of any genre I've ever listened to. Some underrated guys, Vinnie Paz is insane, man. Nas is one of the best ever, man. I love his Shoot 'Em Up song, more into that gangster rap kind of genre. Royce da 5'9" was so good back in the day, man. His song Looking at My Dog. And one of the most underrated rap songs of all time is Uncommon Valor by Ari the Rugged Man. Every time I hear that song, I'm blown away. The concept's kind of cool. It's about the Vietnam War. I think it's about Ari the Rugged Man's father or his uncle or something, and how it was from when he was at Vietnam. Such a sick song, man. I'm also a big fan of rock and a little bit of metal. I go as far as like Linkin Park. I don't get much heavier than that because I know it gets really weird the further you go into metal. I've heard like Alien Core and stuff. It's so strange. I've always liked Breaking Benjamin, System of a Down. Well, technically System of a Down is a little bit heavier than Linkin Park. So yeah, man, music is big for me right now, especially that the GOAT is back, and I really hope Eminem's album's good. And that's it for the episode, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, make sure to give this a like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. I got some news about future content. So for those who have watched previous episodes, I have mentioned before that I've been working on a studio, and I would be using that for different kind of content, for like watch parties or, stuff like that. Everything should be ready by August. I'm aiming to start doing the watch parties by like September on that pay-per-view card or August. And from there, my plan is to start doing watch parties for every single fight. I don't know what you guys like. Do you guys want me to do it by myself? Or would you guys be cool if I brought some friends who are not casuals? They're not people who just started watching. I can bring on friends who've been watching even longer than I have. People who've trained, they have strong opinions. I have one friend who's very strongly opinionated about MMA. And me and him argue sometimes about MMA, and I think it could be be pretty fun. And I was thinking about having cameras and mics and a producer and all that stuff. Watching the fight live, you see our commentary, you see how I see fights live, and you might get surprised by how hype I get during the fights because I'm very mellow. I'm very laid back and stuff, but during the fights, I get very excited. So maybe that could be pretty fun for you guys to watch. I don't know if I'll keep it on this channel or I'll put it on another channel specifically for that kind of stuff. And I was also thinking another podcast episode, but it would be live instead. I've been looking to structure the content in a more professional or like formal schedule. Like Monday I do this, Wednesday I do this, Saturday I do this, stuff like that. You know, I was thinking about having one podcast or two podcasts a week, one prediction video a week, one fight breakdown after the fights, maybe a recap video, and also the watch party every single week. So it'll be like 4 or 5 pieces of content and maybe exclusive content for members of the channel because I haven't really used the members much and I could have some really cool exclusive content in there for you guys. But that's the big news. But I'm just curious about what you guys want, you know? Do you guys prefer it just as it is and not changing anything, or just for the live stuff like the watch party, I can go use a camera just for that and keep the rest of the content the same as it is? I think the live content would be very, very fun, like really engaging, good discussions about MMA. Maybe some of my friends become regulars for you guys and you guys are anticipating what they got to say about the sport during these live streams. I have one friend specifically, I can bring him on. He's the one that got me into MMA in the first place. And I've been talking to him about it and he's all on board for it. You know, he's very knowledgeable. He's been watching MMA since the Pride days. I think that would be really cool. Now, the first few live streams might not run as smoothly. Of course, this goes for almost every live stream. In the beginning, you kind of have to get things in order first, and then maybe like the third or the fourth or the fifth, then you got what you were looking for, you know, then it's like perfect. But the first few, it could be a little bit rocky sometimes with the audio or the visuals or whatever it is. You know, I hope not. Maybe testing it a lot if I am doing this kind of content. So I'll try to mitigate that as much as possible. And that's the only thing. I don't know if to put it on this channel or another channel, which is completely dedicated for the live stream stuff. You know, for anybody that just wants this kind of content, I can keep this content going for this channel. And then for the other channel, it's just all people who are interested in the live streams, the watch parties and stuff like that. I can post like clips and portions of the live stream as a video where, for an example, I know this will happen. We're going to be talking about or having a debate about 2 different fighters in terms of like who beats who, who's greater than who, talking about techniques and stuff like that, or predictions and, you know, whole videos about this stuff, which I think would be really fun. You know, that's what I used to do before I started doing MMA content. I used to get with these guys and watch fights all the time. This is like way back in like 2013, 2012. And every time we're watching fights, it gets super hype and there's a lot of debates flying around. The only thing I would have to hone in is not to let too many people talk at the same time. That's the only thing I gotta really be watching for with my friends, because they will talk. So I gotta moderate that a bit. So I can't wait to see your guys' feedback. Enjoy the summer, walk out your dog, pick up some games of basketball, go to the beach. Enjoy, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next video.